Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be looking at a game played by between Timothy Mwabu and Mutuge in the league over, I think it was last month. It was a while back. It was 7th October, a while back. And the reason why I'm showing this game right now is because I haven't been, I haven't had time between school and playing the league and everything. 'Cause I'm doing two courses at the same time, so it's really hard to get time to make videos. But here I am, finally coming back to study this game. So this game was really fascinating to me because I've played Mutuge and I've played Mwabu. They're all playing Bodwan. So Mwabu is playing Bodwan for University of Nairobi and Mutuge for Strathmore. And I've played them both. I played them both in one weekend, and it wasn't really a pretty weekend for me. I lost against them both, but it was really nice seeing them match up and seeing how their game styles actually differ on the same board. So without uh, saying much more, let's dive into the game and see what happened. So Mobu opened with d4, as I've seen him do over the past maybe, I don't know, a year or so. He mainly opens with d4 and plays knight to f3. So the reason I think he plays knight to f3 after d4 is he doesn't want to commit to a single opening yet until he sees what black wants to do. So Mwabu is really pragmatic in that way. He doesn't want, I think he doesn't want to decide on which opening he wants to play yet until he sees what black is going to respond with, because we will see in this game what Mutuge will do, and I'll also show my game against Mwabu, and you'll see what really happened after I chose the opening that I was going to play as black. So here, I mean, black can do anything just as white. I mean, if black plays something like, let's say d5, the game could continue with even bishop to f4. The game could go with maybe a g3, then bishop g2, or many other things. You can play c4, can transpose into a variety of openings from this position. So Mwabu is really pragmatic in that way. So Mutuge played c5, trying to invite Mwabu to play the Benoni, and Mwabu took the invite and played d5. There was c6, c4, and Mutuge played pawn to d6. Knight to c3 was played next, and bishop to e7. Now, if I'm playing a Benoni personally, if I'm black here, I'd want to trade off, okay, knight to c3. I want to trade off these pawns. I want to play something like knight b d7, or I want to play g6 and I want to play bishop to g7 and put my bishop on this very long diagonal and really apply pressure on the queen side, on white's queen side. Because if you're playing the Benoni, you're really trying to achieve some sort of an attack on the queen side and take white by surprise, because white usually has a very strong control of the center, and it is best, I think, if your opponent is attacking you in the center, it's best to retaliate and attack from the flanks. So after bishop to e7, again, this isn't like the typical Benoni, because let me give you another move order. After d4, maybe knight to f6, c4, and now after c5, the pawn is pushed, and let's say we have something like this. You can see now the difference between this setup and the other, because here we have the 3 pawns at the center, and immediately black trades, we can take back with the e pawn, and we have a position where we still have our c pawn, and we can now develop the knight to f3, or develop our bishop first, then bring the other knight to e2. And this gives us an extra tempo as white, because now we have some sort of a solid control of the queen side, because in the other variation, black is, I think, ready to play b5 at any time he wants. I mean, a6 and b5 will be very easy to play, but right now if you look at it, after playing a6, still playing b5 is hard. So white will probably need to play something like, I mean, black will need to probably play something like knight b7, g6, bishop to g7, and try and prepare this attack, maybe by rook b8, I mean, then a6, b5, and it's significantly harder for black to launch the queen side in this variation compared to the other that we had in the game. So here as you can see now, instead of bishop to I could, if I was black, I could have traded in the center, and now you see that b5 is not really that hard to achieve after a6, b5, because the pawn on c4 is not stopping our pawn on b5 from moving forward. And I think this was the idea that Mutuge could have gone for. So instead he chose bishop to e7, which is subpar but still playable, and Mwabu achieved pushing e4. And now if you trade in the center, you can see that we've transposed back into a structure that is similar to the variation I showed earlier, but now white is clearly better from the opening. White has achieved everything he wanted in the opening, and the control of the b5 square, which is very important, is not possible for white. So after playing e4 and castles from black and bishop to e2, I thought, personally, from looking at the game, I thought white had achieved a success in the opening. I think white had much more control. The bishop on e7 is just looking, I don't want to say silly, but yeah, it's not really looking comfortable. It's staring at its own pawns. That's a bad arrow. So it's staring at its own pawns and the knight, and it doesn't really have much mobility compared to if it was on g7. It will have control of this very neat diagonal. So you're going to see as the game develops, Mutuge, realizes this and tries to place the bishop on the deserved or the right diagonal. So after bishop to e2, the pawns are traded, bishop to g5 was played. We just castled, and rook e8, trying to create some space for the bishop. So the bishop goes back to f8, then comes to g7. But personally, I thought this could have been done much earlier. So Mwabu continued with bishop to f4, which is very practical, which is very reasonable in the Benoni, playing against the Benoni. Personally, I prefer, there's a line that I play that has bishop to f4 earlier, and that is the line I prefer to play when I'm facing the Benoni if I'm going to play d4. So bishop to f8 is played, h3, pushing the bishop back, and queen to c2. So queen to c2 is just, I don't know, in most queen's gambits, declined variations, I mean, queen to c2 is usually played much earlier, just trying to deny the light square bishop of important squares. So it's 3, queen c2, and h6 was played. So I thought h6 was played as a prophylactic move to prevent bishop to g5, but then I didn't. I mean, you could play anything, maybe knight bd7, and if he plays it now, you can even now play h6, and I think black is slowly regaining control of the game. So I didn't really understand why h6 was played personally, but to each their own. So instead, Mob played pawn to a4, which I thought was the first concession of control of the game. Something else that could have been played, maybe rook to e1. Rook to e1 looks really solid. You can bring your bishop back. You can play a bishop to b3. You can even follow back with a g4 and a g5, you know, like rook to e1 still maintains some control in the game, and it really gives white something to play for. But immediately after playing a4 and knight b7, rook to e1 is now played, but I don't think it's okay. This is only because I think black allowed this is because black allowed white to get back in the game in that way. I think what she could have done instead is maybe play bishop here, and after bishop to d3, trade on d3, and play something like g6, bishop g7, and continue with the game. Because I think bishop to g7 is a really important move to play. I'd have it played much earlier, but you know, Mutuge is from what I learned after playing with him, to put it into context, Mutuge is one of those players who don't really have superior opening knowledge. I mean, Mutuge is nowhere near the rest of his, let me say, like the people at his rating level. Mutuge is rated, I think, 1758, and Mwabu is around 1790. This was at the time the league was being played. So right now they could be higher or lower. I'm not really sure. But Mutuge doesn't have as good opening theory knowledge as the rest. So because even when I played him, I really felt like, I mean, straight from the opening, I had like +2 or 3 advantage. I mean, I was totally in control from the opening. But what um, he lacks in opening theory, you know, he has tremendous calculation skills. I mean, I haven't played against a player who can calculate like Mutuge does. So what he does is he gets something playable from the opening, then he tries and outsmarts and outcalculates you throughout the game. So and that I think has been working for him. There's a reason he's 1700 rated at this moment. So uh, from what you could see, I mean, it's visible from the opening. I think Mwabu had achieved everything he wanted, and Mutuge was still yet to develop. So after knight bd7, rook e1 was played finally. Uh, Queen to c7, which I thought was really, I mean, I understand that Mutuge is playing queen to c7 to try and maintain some sort of control over the d6 pawn, because immediately after knight to b5, queen to b8 was played, adding more defense to the weak d6 pawn. So every time you employ the Benoni, you have to be really careful about the d6 backward pawn. So you really have to protect it, because it's one of the weaknesses that white plays against, and most of the time the Benoni falls because of the d6 pawn. So you really have to be careful and really watch out for it. So here a5 was played, and from here the game became incredibly tactical and incredibly hard in a way to defend the a5 pawn. You can see after the knight was pushed back to c3, queen to c7 back, and you can see the idea now. You can see the idea. The idea is to gang up on this pawn, find a way of trading it, and continue. You know, also another trait I think that Mutuge has is one of those people who usually he plays for pawns. I mean, he gains a pawn in the opening or in the middle game, and he holds on to it until the game is over. And he's really good at doing it. So bishop was played back. The reason bishop was played back is because tactically the pawn on a5 might be lost. How though? Yeah, so bishop takes. If you play something else, like let's say let's play a nothing move like king to h1, just to show the tactic. So bishop takes. You don't really want to take back with your pawn, because then the pawn structure is destroyed or something. So if bishop takes, rook takes with check, rook takes back, and queen takes on d5. And you can see the pawn is the pawn is lost, and there's a queenside majority on for black, and black will easy, okay, not easily, but this is convertible for black. At least black has something to play for. So instead, what you'd have to do after bishop takes on f3, you have to take back with the pawn, and you play this position, which it's not lost, but it's significantly harder to play. I mean, you can jump in with the knight and try and exchange it and repair your pawn structure, but it's significantly harder to play than the other variation. So bishop to e3 was played, just disconnecting the rook on the same file. So now if bishop takes bishop takes f3, the bishop can just recapture on f3, and the game continues. So bishop was played to g6, queen to d2. I mean, I could have played maybe bishop to d3 and try to exchange the bishops and continue the game in that front, but then that could have, if you play bishop to d3, then bishop takes, queen takes, and the knight jumps into e5, and you really don't know who is controlling the game from here. So instead, Mwabu just moved out of the way, and the rooks, okay, Mutuge threatened to double the rooks, and bishop to b1 was played. Sorry about that. The rooks are doubled, and bishop to f4 was played now. Bishop to h7, king to f1, just bring the king closer uh, to the defense of the rooks in case any exchanges happen. You don't really want your rooks to be under defended on the open e file, because these rooks are doubled, and everything there explains itself. So okay, to f1 was played. Rook, Mutuge remove the rook from this nasty pin. The bishop on a4. My god, I'm doing bad arrows. So the bishop on a4 is pinning the knight to the rook, and now he's preparing to develop the knight, to actually redevelop the knight. So the bishops are traded, knight to e5 was played, knight takes, rook takes, and bishop to f4 takes, king takes, rook to e8 check, and king back to f1. Knight to d7 is played. So the idea, I think, from black is to now take advantage of the e5 square and really place, because if you look at the position, white pieces are all concentrated on defending the a5 pawn. So the control of the e5 square is really, I'd say, really weak from white's point of view, and as black wants to capitalize on this and really place his pieces on the optimum squares on the king side, because the maybe rule of thumb in chess is when your opponent is focused, or maybe when his forces are focused on one direction, you quickly switch and apply pressure on the other. So queen to f4 was played, stopping the immediate knight to e5 idea, because if knight to e5, just queen takes and it's over. So this stopped it for a moment, but g6 is played, rook back to d1, the trade, and now bishop to g7. So the bishop arrived on g7, but it's really, doing nothing from here, because if it arrived much earlier, I think there would be more pressure on the diagonal from the onset. But right now it's just there to, maybe support knight to e5, but the game is still, I mean, there are not so many pieces on the board, so the game is maybe drawish from here, because it's really hard to prove an advantage at this moment in time. If there were more pieces on the board and the bishop was in g7, maybe then you could say that there's something to be played for here. So king was played to g7, queen back to b3. It seems that the pawn is free, but no, it isn't, because after takes, queen takes on b3, and white has a lot of pressure in the position. I mean, black can play maybe check. Yeah, check, maybe king to 2, and after takes here, you play something like bishop to d2. Oh, well, okay, you can't really take, because The queen just captures the queen. Okay, I missed that. I missed that. So after the check and king to e2, the king looks unsafe, but I think it's really comfortable in that square. Maybe queen to h1 and try and put some pressure on the pawns. But white always has a significant counterplay. So this wasn't uh, after queen to b3, you can't really take the pawn on e5. So the knight was played back to d7, and in my opinion, this was the first sort of indication that they had no plans, both of them. I mean, okay, Mutuge is a very, very fast player. He calculates really quick, and he puts a lot of time pressure on his opponents. And so was the case in this game. Mwabu didn't really have all that much time to play around with, and Mutuge is just trying to maneuver and trying to create something position. So h5 was played, knight finally landed on e5, the exchange, and Mwabu played his knight to e4. So the position is still, I don't know, drawish, but now it's open, and it will go down to whose king is safer than the others. So Mutuge played queen to e7, trying to take advantage of the position that white is in. Maybe jump into h4, maybe create some checks, just some threats. This position, I think, because uh, Mwabu had, I think, like 10 or 15 minutes at this point. So I think the strategy for Mutuge was to try and play uh, really quick and pose as many questions as he can, and let Mwabu, spend the rest of his time trying to calculate. So queen to h3 was played, and this was a position that I was playing my game, and this is a position that I found when I came back to their board. And after my game ended, this was the position I found them in. And I I mean, we were discussing with Chris Miner, and instead of playing king to g7, I thought bishop takes b2 was much more threatening for black. I mean, considering Mobu had, I think, uh, 10 or 7 minutes on his clock, and Mutuge had bunch of time. He had like 25 minutes. I thought bishop takes to b2 causes more problems. I mean, now white has to calculate this line. So after bishop takes b2, I can show you the line that I ended up calculating. So Mutuge told me that he was afraid of queen to d6, but here the queens can be traded, and now you bring your king back, because you cannot allow this pawn to march forward. You bring your king back. You're either going to go to f6 or f8 and try and stop this pawn from moving forward. So white takes the pawn. Now here you go king to f8. He grabs another pawn, and you play bishop to a3. So this was the line that I saw, and this was the line that I thought was really, really, testing, because then our idea is to capture the pawn, maybe uh, maybe march towards the queen set and try and trap this knight somehow, because then we're going to play bishop to b4. So maybe something like king to e2, maybe bishop to b4, and bishop to b4 ties down this knight to the defense of the a5 pawn. So in this way, I think black will have tested white in a better way, but I don't know, maybe Mutuge also didn't want to calculate, so instead he played king to g7, pawn to b3 was played, queen to f7, queen all the way to c8, and after a bunch of moves, Mwabu offered a draw, and they agreed on a draw in this position. So yeah, the critical moment I think in this game was at this point, before in the end game, I mean, because I think bishop takes b2 is, I think, the best way to go. about the position, considering the time and considering the pressure you could have put on your opponent. Because after queen to d6, queen takes, pawn takes, king marches in, knight takes, maybe king to f6 even is playable. You can take on g7 after bishop to a3, just defending our own pawn and preparing bishop to b4, putting pressure on the other pawn, and also you're capturing the pawn really soon. So maybe king e2, can even play it now. After he comes forward, you just grab the pawn, and you know we have some ideas of creating a pass pawn on the h file, and it will be up to white to try and prove that he has something in this position. You know, because black is now playing probably a two result game, and yeah, white can also try and push for something, but you know the game could have continued anyhow from here. So this was the game between Mwabu and Mutuge. They agreed on a draw, and I think Strathmore won. Yeah, I think Strathmore won the game. I mean the match, and it was practically a huge contribution of it was on their board. Three Stam Kamau game, I think. I'll look for the game and I'll post it. So anyway, this was the game between them, between the two giants. These are among, I mean, these are the top two or top, they're among the top three rated, highest rated players in the Super League in Kenya right now. And it was amazing to see their game and how their styles differ. So yeah, that was it. I hope you have an amazing rest of the weekend. And I'm going to be posting a bunch of videos from now, because I have to finish uploading the Lepeli Cup, which I've been postponing for reasons unknown. Okay, I know the reasons because I lost the last games, but I'm still going to upload them, and I'm going to upload also my games from the league against Mutuge, against Mwabu, and against Chris Minor. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. You know, don't forget to click on subscribe button, comment, and share.